Hello, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League. My name is Peter Cinnamon, and this week, by Jove, Larne did the business at Inver Park. They put Balcani to the sword via penalties and avenged last season's thumping by the Kosovans to keep their Euro dreams alive. And they're dreaming big up on the Antrim coast right now as the Gibraltar champions of Lincoln Red Imps. That's all that stands in their way of a truly historic first for Irish League football: qualification to a European competition proper. Many across the league are in fact pulling for the Inver Reds, especially those clubs with a sought after striker prospect on their books. If there is such thing as a opposite to a yellow sticker for footballers, teams right now are scrambling about to try and slap one on their best players, just in case Larne come a calling. In league matters, which Larne have to worry about till term time, the Blues and the Reds lead the way with 2 wins on the bounce. Meanwhile, Ballymena, Glenavon, Portadown, they prop up the rest of the division with nothing on the board. People say that you shouldn't pay too much attention to the league table this early on in the season. Perhaps the Irish League wants to break that trend. Let's chat about it. I think we should on this, your latest weekly edition of Kicking Match. There is lots to talk about this week, so we should probably get straight down to business, and we'll do that by inviting in my guest this week. It is a return to the rather dashing Coleraine Chronicle sports editor. Make some noise, clap your hands. It's Damian Mullan.
Greetings from a sunny North Coast.
People always think the North Coast is like either glistening in sunshine or damp from October rain, so it's kind of it's very binary, I imagine, up in Coleraine direction.
Yeah, you did leave out the gale force winds as well, Peter.
Surely that's a little bit of seasoning that you get all year round, no?
Do you know what? I'm quite a fan of the winds and the gales myself. Walking 2 dogs and on downhill beach in the winter when you have the whole beach to yourself, there's a lot to be said for it. So I'm all for that.
You're looking at those pups years thinking, no wind, you guys don't know how good yous have got it.
It's different in the summer because there are obviously restrictions on where you can walk your dog on the beaches as well. So down with the summer, that's what I say.
Well, we should probably start with a bit of news, which is somewhat related to summer, and that's the fact that, by all accounts, I'm not getting the big calendar of season changes, but Larne might not end up playing any Irish League football of note while the summer is about. It's all due to their success on the pitch, as if you don't know by now, they were able to slay Balcani. It did take penalties to do it, but it is a significant result. One, because it's the only team that has actually progressed through a round through winning this summer in Europe for Irish League teams, but it means they're now in exactly the same position that Linfield was in 2 years ago. I'm talking RFS kind of zone they're in now, and their opponents are the Red Imps from Gibraltar. They'll not be going to Gibraltar. They'll have to play their games, their game in Portugal. But before we get on to that, all of Irish League circles broadly have said, well done, Larne. This should be good for the league. Are you in that camp?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I think kudos to Larne for what they have achieved thus far. They are the only Irish League club still flying the flag for the domestic league. So kudos to them for that no mean achievement. I think, as you rightly sort of pointed out there in your introduction, Peter, it's a bit of a double-edged sword for them because whilst it's great, I think I was reading somewhere that potentially if they win the 2-legged game against the lovely named the Red Imps, I think they stand to make me in the region of like £3 million, I think, which is a considerable sum of money in Irish League terms. But then the other side of that, in terms of the double-edged sword that I was talking about, I think I read a piece that potentially Linfield and Cliftonville, who have both started the league very well, if they keep going in that similar pattern, they could be like 15 points ahead of Larne before Larne actually get their defence of the Gibson Cup underway. And, that's psychologically, I mean, I've never been a player. I've never been in a professional atmosphere like that. But if you were a Larne player management and you happen to be sitting on your first league game of the season, whenever that comes, and you're maybe potentially 15 points behind some of your biggest rivals, surely that's going to have some sort of an effect, even subconsciously. I know Tiernan and the players will say all the right things, etc., etc. But you're already behind the sort of the eight ball, as it were, even before balls be kicked. So kudos to them. Great to see a team from the Irish League do well, because let's not forget, all about coefficients, etc., etc. Any successful team in the Irish League helps in terms of getting more clubs in the Irish League in future seasons. So yes, to answer your original point, yeah, fair play to Larne. That's what I say. I don't think I'd be one of the ones that would be jealous and thinking, oh, I wouldn't be a begrudger. So, as I say, they've worked hard for it. They've slowly been getting better in European football, and this is the reward for that. And if they do get through, not only will it benefit Larne, but I'm sure it will also benefit the Irish League, just in terms of focus and everything that goes along with that. So yeah, good luck to them, I say.
It was an historic night there at Inver. I thought for Larne that they started the game really well against Balcani. There wasn't a huge amount of clear-cut chances, but they looked a lot more into the game compared to what I'd seen previously in their fixture against RFS. And conceding that penalty was tough, because it then gives the Kosovans a bit of an ascendancy feeling. It's all even now. We can go out and win this. And I think Balcani looked better on the ball. That's either a mentality thing or just a skill and ability thing. Larne were happy in many ways to surrender possession, but in the end, Balcani couldn't really do much about it. And if we're talking about mentality, Larne were the clear winners on that occasion. I don't know how much losing to an Andorran side on penalties impacted Balcani, but they were rubbish. They missed their first two. Let's give credit as well to Ferguson, the goal, for his contribution to stopping them as well. But to look at it, 2-0 up on penalties, the Larne, did it go to 3-0 as well? Like, stranger things have happened, and I'm sure plenty of people in Inver Park were worrying, please do not mess it up from here. But they put themselves in such a great scenario, getting through. We've seen this journey of Larne from some man getting a photograph of the ball saying, I'm going to bring Champions League football to this relative minnow away from Belfast in Larne, who hadn't done much for decades, and to then eventually get over that step to get through to this final round in Europe is great. They've still got one more hurdle to go, and let's be fair, I don't think people are treating this as some sort of Roy the Rovers, good luck and get out there, sure, it's only a game of football. Like, they're in this tie. They might not be favourites, but there is pressure, and there should be pressure. There should be intent to say, we can't just look at it glassy-eyed and we're the minnows and we'll give it a good go. They might not win out, but Larne need to step up here and give themselves a good go, because, like you said, if they do well, there's 30 Shea cartons of money there for you.
I think also, like, listening to what you're saying, Peter, it's true. And I think from other clubs' perspectives, yes, there'll be a certain degree of, yes, go on, Larne. Happy to see them doing well. But I think, and I'm obviously here, in Coleraine, my local team is Coleraine. We've had that well publicized takeover in the summer, which I'm sure will come up during the podcast, etc. But what I think other clubs can take from Larne is that they can look at it and think, if Larne can do it, well, we can do it. Maybe not immediately, maybe not overnight, but I would imagine that there are people in Coleraine, investors, the players, the management, looking at Larne, thinking to themselves, if Larne can do it, why not? Why not us? Obviously, a little bit further down the line, this is like speaking from a Coleraine point of view once again. You're looking at Larne, they're 5-6 years down in the line of the full time, so it's taken them that little bit of time. Similarly, for any other club like a Coleraine or maybe a Linfield that maybe are full time and further down the line as well. But I think other clubs can take great heart from a Larne or a Linfield previously and think, and that's to be ambitious, is to think, we can do that. We can compete in Europe. And what would it be like if you had a Larne this season, for example, in the group stages of a European competition? What that would entail, and other clubs going down into the future. If you had 2 or 3 Irish League clubs competing at various levels of European football in the group stages, I mean, uncharted territory for the Irish League. But you think of the publicity and all the sponsorship, the money, etc., that would flow not just to individual clubs, but also to the league as a whole. And we always hear about, we're trying to better the league and we're trying to improve standards, and surely that has to be one way that will happen.
It simply, from an Irish League growth point of view, it has to happen. And in many ways, this European experience for all of our clubs has hit home, that as much as we think we are on this manifesting of destiny of the Irish League getting better, a lot of other countries have been doing that in their own unique different ways, but they've been on a similar kind of idea. And when you hear actually Jared Lawler talking about looking at how academies work, how we develop players, I think a lot of other countries have viewed this new European format as an opportunity for them, and they have been able to exploit it in their own way. And simply, an Irish League club has to make this happen. And I think if we're sitting here in 10 years' time and it hasn't happened, we have let ourselves down, and in many ways we have failed. Look, this might not be the year for Larne, and I think Lincoln Red Imps are this odd proposition of going, we should beat them because they're Gibraltar, but how they've formed their team, like their players just could be better. Ultimately, this is a team who has got through to this part of, the group stages, or the league stage as it will be now. They've got there before. The prize is so great. I think mentally, this is what Larne will have to prove. Can they mentally take on the pressure? That if they won't, they, and perhaps this might not be the time, but we all look back 2 years later on what a sliding doors moment RFS was for Linfield. We'll never know how that will ultimately impact the modern history of Linfield, maybe for another couple of 2-3 years, thinking what could have been. The fact that there's talk of Linfield now looking for investment is just, now that was unthinkable 5-10 years ago, thinking surely this is a self-sustainable club at the absolute highest end. You talk about those teams dreaming to be here, that is often talked about, and the concerns will be that almost everybody will think, if we dream, we can make it happen, and sure, stick it on the credit card and we don't have to worry about it. But they are clearly something that a lot of teams will want to aspire to. It's hard to tell. First leg is now going to be the week of this recording, and they've got a little bit of luck there because they're playing away from home, and then they've got Inver. I think most fans would snap your hand off right now for a 0-0. I guess just how can they deal with the heat and the pressure out in Faro?
They've got a little bit of experience in Europe now, so I think that will stand to them. But just listening to you there, Peter, and one of the things I recall from our first meeting as journalists with the new owners of Coleraine, and one of the things that they actually mentioned and talked about, and it struck me, was in the Irish League, teams and therefore also players have a chance of playing in European football. I think they had mentioned that they had also friends that were thinking of investing in a club down the pyramid in English League football. And the guys that invested in Coleraine more or less said to them, why would you want to invest in a club in maybe the 7th or 8th tier of English League football? When you could invest in a club in the Irish League, say there's 12 teams in the top flight, and on a good year, there's maybe 3-4 clubs, the potential to qualify for Europe. So not only does that help you get money when you're playing in Europe, but a knock-on effect of that is when you're looking for players, you can go to players in the lower leagues of England, Scotland, and dangle that carrot in front of them. And you can say, you can come to Coleraine or Larne, and you could be playing Champions League football or European football in a year's time or 2 years' time. If that player is offered a similar style contract with I'll pluck a name out of my head that may not even be in the right league, Boreham Wood or somebody like that, or something comparable to here, it's a no-brainer. If I was a player, I had a chance of joining an Irish league club. If I was Scottish or English, and the owners of the club were saying there's a chance that you could be playing in Europe in 2 or 3 years' time, I know where I would want to play, and that is one of the benefits of a Larne making Europe, and maybe other clubs following them down the line, because that's just going to open the door for better players.
And it's putting your league and your club, from a Larne point of view, on the map. Because look at what Larne are doing and other teams are trying to do. You see this relationship that they're developing with Crystal Palace and others. You can see how it may be attractive for whatever club in the Scottish or English pyramid to go, hold on a second, do we want to send our loanee, who might be the next big starter, to League One or League Two, especially young, or do we want to put them out there and potentially playing European football? Now, they may be getting duffed every time they play, but against these teams from Turkey, Greece, Holland, whatever, you know, and ultimately you've got to hope diamond sharpens diamond and it will improve Larne. I do ultimately believe in the trickle-down effect. Look, if Larne get through and they have to kind of sign a semi-second squad to try and fill all these fixtures, like, if you're talking about teams in the Premier League of England saying maybe it was a good thing that insert team didn't get into Europe because they don't have to worry about doing all those games and thin out their squad. Like, if we're talking about the Man United's, Newcastle's, whatever, and how Aston Villa's season could go down the drain because they have to play one more game a week, how is a Larne going to deal with that? You know, so that will then trickle down, investment, better players coming in, maybe teams that don't get down to Larne, it goes down. So look, from Team Kicking Match, all the best Larne. We'll be following it with massive intrigue. Let's now go to some of the results or the resulting impact of them getting through. Like I said, Larne will not be playing a game, I believe, until the 1st of September. A number of games.
That's at Coleraine, as it happens.
They game the Sunday's postponed, game midweek is postponed, yep, etc., follow along the line until September. This has caused a slight bit of consternation. Why do Larne get this special treatment? What's going to happen if they do get through? Should they just not have to play the games anyway? And there is a debate on either side. Some think gotta play the games, tough luck. Other side, of course, will go, the league has to try and help this team as much as possible. It's not a Larne thing, it could be any team, to try and get themselves over the line. Do you think the Irish League have got this right by doing this, or is there competitive questions to be answered by the league?
Well, there's two players involved, two parties involved. Obviously, NIFL, the league bosses, and also Larne as well. So, Larne as a club must be kind of in favour of getting their domestic games temporarily put on hold, because if they didn't want to, I'm sure they would press on ahead with it. But it is a difficult one. I am not one of the power brokers in this, thankfully. I don't see what the problem is. If Larne, as a club and as a set of management and players, if they're happy enough to put on hold their league games to try and concentrate on the European League, knowing that they're going to have to play catch-up, if they're happy with that, then I don't see why anybody else should have a problem with that. That's my personal opinion.
If that then gets you to the 1st of September and the entirety of August out, if we can dare dream from a Larne point of view, they get through. Some people have thought up, well, will this then continue beyond the September? It is an imaginary scenario where we currently speak. Like, that would probably be described as overkill, or does it fall back into the camp of Larne just have to make a call?
Like, I hadn't really thought about that, right? All I know is they're obviously trying to give them every opportunity to get over this two-legged affair into the group stages. Now, if Larne were successful getting into the group stages at that stage, I don't think it's fair for every other team in the league to have their scheduled proposed games against Larne affected by what Larne are doing. I think there has to come a point, if Larne are successful and they get into the group stages, then they have to, as a club and as a set of players, etc., they have to just combine the two like any other club in any other league in the world. English clubs do it, Scottish clubs do it. I don't think we should have a scenario where Larne are a special case for the duration of how long they are in Europe. I don't think that's fair on everybody. I think there's a certain degree, Peter, of goodwill towards Larne, and they hope that they get into the group stages. But I think if and when they get into the group stages, I think everybody else and fans of other clubs will go, right, you're on your own now. It's what happens to you. And do you know what as well? See football fans being football fans and football fans of other clubs, there'll be some of them privately going, we might have a chance of winning the league here because if Larne are busy on a number of different fronts, it'll give my club an opportunity to try and maybe wrest the league title away from Larne. So I think, yes, by all means, give them every opportunity to qualify for the group stages. But after that, I'm sorry, they have to just live with it. That's the price of success almost.
And of course, that is only just what people are theorizing. There has been no legitimate suggestions that might happen. No, so
I'm theorizing
as well. Obviously, a part of that might be if they do get through, well, like they'll have a lot of cash, which they might want to help fund other ventures within the club. If they are playing every Thursday for 6 weeks on and off, you might say they might want to invest that. Obviously, they lost Lee Bonis there last week. There has been stories cropping up of who might have to fill his boots, somebody that might want to put in there. Two names have cropped up. One, the name of David Fisher. The other one being Benji McGee. Neither of those players started their game on Saturday. That got the good old rumour mill cranking wild good. Obviously, one of those players actually scored on Saturday. Benji McGee, that is a come and get me kind of goal, if that's to be fair. There's been a lot of questions around his future based on his age, his talent, everything that he did last year. Let's be fair, he was off the boil a bit come maybe January, February time, but the talent is clearly there despite having a few corners that might be needed rounded. The chat within papers that there has been a bid for David Fisher that's been bounced back. Some journalists are now reporting that from their sources, they believe Larne are going to go to Benji McGee in a world where you're Larne and you can just eeny, meeny, miny, mo pick. If you were the man in recruitment, which of those strikers would you pick and why?
I'd take both of them if I was Larne. Given the profit they made in Lee Bonis, I would just go buy the pair of them and that would be it. Job done. But, well, this is going to be Larne's problem now because people know that they have money. And then now that they know that they need a replacement for Lee Bonis ASAP, if you're sitting Glentoran, Larne can make a bid for Fisher. Of course, you're going to go, no, it's not enough. And I suppose the hope stroke belief that Larne will come back with an improved offer. Similarly, I suppose, with Loughgall and Benji McGee. But what may happen is, for example, that the player Fisher or McGee may then try to up the ante. I'm not saying that I don't know either of the two, but they may start looking to say to the club, like, I want to go, I want to move, I want to leave. It's happened in football, we all know, across the water, across the world for years. If a player wants to leave a club, it's very, very difficult for the club to retain him. And in that scenario, the club, I suppose, have to then just try and get the best money that they can. It's difficult. I mean, they do seem very keen on Fisher. He was the first name that was being linked with Larne, and I know they have made a concrete offer for him. So
he is probably the more dependable prospect. He's a player who's played in England before. He's got that bit more experience. He's definitely the more all-rounded player. It's that version of ceiling versus floor. I can tell you, and it's my gimmick in a way, I've been a captain or a lieutenant of the Benji McGee fan club for a long time, so I can tell you all the great things that I think Benji McGee adds to a team. When you're the main man at Loughgall versus you're going to have to come on and do good things for Larne where you're playing against a different kind of defensive block. Can he do that? I don't know. I often think that maybe some of the weaknesses in his game, which might be the likes of ball control, passing, would full-time football training and a bit of coaching maybe help, working with different players, really focusing on your strengths rather than the ability that he has to push. Like, I mean, look at that goal on Saturday. He just takes around a player, gets into the box, and then he has the ability to find the top corner. I mean, that's what you're looking at. That's the top end stuff that he can offer. Was he a one season wonder? We don't know. But Fisher does have that, play at a higher level, can score goals, maybe is a more similar mold to Bonis in the sense that they can run the channels, maybe has better link up play. Like I said, maybe you want both, but I'm not surprised by Larne looking at either. It's the project versus the more solid potential product.
That's exactly it. You're talking about Benji McGee, and I guess similar arguments were put forward when Larne made their move for Lee Bonis in the first place a number of years ago. People scoffed at the transfer fee that Larne paid for the services of Lee Bonis. At that time, people said maybe it wasn't the finished article, or he wasn't that great a player, he wasn't worth the money. That's similar to what you're now saying about Benji McGee. The problem is, or the question is, Larne, when they signed Lee Bonis, were a slightly different animal than what they are now. They're much further down the line of competing, winning leagues, competing in Europe. They weren't maybe at that juncture when they did sign Lee Bonis initially. So I guess it comes down, it's almost like a gamble. Which do you go for? Do you go for, you say, maybe David Fisher, who's played at a higher level in England, or Benji McGee, who has the undoubted promise potential, showed last year that he can score against any team in this particular league. So that's a kind of a choice that you have between those two. But I also have a sneaking suspicion that it's a certain degree of newspaper talk there, that there's names being bandied out there and they're put. That doesn't mean to say that that's who exactly Larne are looking towards. They have a good history, Larne, of looking across, particularly to Scotland, and recruiting very, very well in Scotland. Obviously, Andy Ryan is the prime example. And it would not surprise me if we've seen them pluck somebody from across the water. Maybe somebody like another Andy Ryan who has done it in Scotland and is coming here. But at this, to cut long story short, at this moment in time, I think Larne needs somebody that can come in and do a job straight away. I don't think they have the time or the luxury of bringing somebody in that may have question marks over them. Not saying Benji McGee has by any means, because I know he's done it, but they need somebody to hit the ground running straight away.
And it's that if you want to continue to repeat what you did last year, and it was a phenomenal season from Larne, from a performance, from a pure points amassing point of view. If you're gonna, you still have Paul O'Neill, you still have Ryan. Lusty's going to emerge as a player for them. McKendry's a part of that puzzle as well. How much juice do they need to add to this concoction to try and feel like you've got the same output, the same ability to change a game? And look, you're never going to find a Lee Bonis at the level he is right now, or was last week when he was a Larne player, that's able just to fit in. And it reminds me a wee bit here about trying that team building point of view, where David Healy was very honest when he was out of Europe, saying this is going to impact us bringing in players and how we build upon this team. So, I mean, a part of me thinks that all the excitement, of course, of Larne going through and what this means for someone in my position and your position from a media point of view, that's interesting. We should point out that they will play at Inver for this tie, but if they do get through, they'll move to Windsor Park. That'll be something also interesting and funny to get into. How does that work with the rest of the league? But I am slightly fascinated about a team sitting there when everyone knows 3 million sitting in the bank, and them going, "Ooh, we might need to fill out this team." And look, they've got a huge amount. They've got a really healthy squad, a mix of experience and a few ones that are punch for the future on that bench. I think if you're playing them out of games that they will do, they'll need to expand it even further. I'm really fascinated with the 3 or 4 days they will have to try and bulk it out and where those players come from. Damien, I want to ask you a question here. It's a wee bit self-indulgent, but I very much double down on my love of, or at least my belief in the player that is Lee Bonis. And I know sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil, etc., etc. But the people who disagreed with that opinion were very, very loud. And I appreciate someone in my position in the podcast world putting stuff out in social media. It's the idea of catching the eye, creating discussion. Of course, creating discussion is what I was, interested in doing. It's also trying to put out a bit of analysis out there. But it wasn't there to try and catch the eye from a, wow, look at this headline point of view. But what I noticed, right, and as much as I don't want to spend 20 minutes here talking about why I think Lee Bonis is better than player X, is that when people said, Peter, you're talking rubbish, here is 10, 15 strikers who I think are better. I wasn't seeing people going, tell you who's better than Lee Bonis, or in the top 10, Ronan Hale, or modern players right now, or maybe a Fitzpatrick or a Shevlin, for example, where if you actually took their raw numbers and the success that they've had, they might be in with a shout of being amongst those players. So I'm interested to see what you think of, because I put the timeline of the 21st century. Do you believe Irish League fans are slightly nostalgic, and maybe this is a football thing, but we over promote, we over celebrate people from 10, 15 years ago and look at their great success and maybe diminish the greatness that we have in front of us? Like I had people messaging me saying, I can't believe you're suggesting that the Irish League right now is of a better quality than 15 years ago. Like, I don't even think that can be discussed. I love Irish League from 15 years ago. I have incredible memories from 20 years ago. But facts, and you might have better memories and star players that you loved, but from a X's and O's, quality of play, talent of football that you have in front of you, it is. I just think it is absolutely better now.
That's football in a nutshell, though, Peter. It's a subjective thing that we all are involved in, and I don't even think it's an Irish League peculiarity. I think it also applies across the water in the Premier League. I'm old enough to remember the old days, and I would hanker back to maybe when the game was a bit more physical, for example, in the English Premiership. When you had maybe think more things were allowed to go. There was a different style of football played. There were different players. I just think that's a general football fan thing, that they always hanker back to the halcyon days as they might envisage it. But you talk about Lee Bonis, right? And about maybe other people not maybe rating him as much as a striker, etc. Right? You look at the facts. Larne paid £100,000 for him, which when they bought him, I think £100,000 for a transfer between Irish League clubs was a serious amount of money. He's just left. He's now gone for, I think, if you read the papers, £300,000. Massive amount of money. Again, now, the clubs that are buying him can't be wrong. They're buying him for a reason. They're not just, here we have a wee bit of money, we'll just go and we'll buy that player. They obviously see something in him that makes him a standout player that's able to transfer for £100,000 between two Irish League clubs and then go across the water for 300k, which is probably as much as Irish League players have gone for in recent times. So that tells you that people in the game know something. And I think what he does have, he scores goals, but he's much more than that. His work rate, his strength, his awareness, he's a complete package as a striker, isn't he? He's the kind of striker that defenders hate to play against. He scores goals, but he also doesn't give defenders a moment to settle. And if people in the game think he's worth 300k or 100k, I think that tells you everything you need to know.
And I would like to rest my case on this non-argument, which I'm holding back from me versus social media. I mean, just look at the amount of young players. I know young players have always moved on from the league to progress into professional football, but I mean the sheer number of players that not only have been a part of teams but have progressed significantly in the league and beyond to do it. Like the numbers we're seeing over the past 3 years in particular outstrip everything that we would have seen a number of years ago. And I think we will soon see the progression of the league in the past few years bear fruit. Might not have the kind of classic nostalgia feel player wise than what you remember 20 years ago, but truly right now the quality and the skill of players, it is beyond what we saw, and it's really exciting.
That's a very good point you raised, because I'm old enough to remember when a player from here, from the Irish League, left to join a club in England. It was a major story. It didn't happen very often. It was a massive, massive story. And in the last couple of years, we're talking about quite a number from Linfield. Teenagers have gone across the water. We've obviously had Patrick Kelly from Coleraine. We've had other ones as well. Can't just call to mind. But I think that backs up what you're saying. I'm old enough to remember when maybe like a Stephen Lomas left Coleraine and went to Man City. There wasn't too many that came after him.
Peter Thompson was the one where you're like, yes, he is our superstar. Someone eventually take him away. And I'm not denying the quality of Arkins, Hamilton, Spike, all those brilliant players. There's definitely something to football's changed. Football's more modern. The analytics, the scouts, the way that can go, people are picking them out. But it's great to see those players move on, and I think it will be. We've seen people like that move on. The Macaulays, the Dallases, move from Irish League football and get their place there in the Northern Ireland national team. I think we could look back, or we will look in a couple of years and go, wow, look at the amount of ex-Irish League players who play it, maybe only a season, maybe only a couple of games near the end of it, and we'll go, look at them playing on the international stage. And it's exciting, and it's because of all the great work clubs have put in. A tree does not grow overnight. It takes weeks, months, years to become this big, mighty oak. And I think from my point of view, it's exciting. We are very much in that process.
What you're saying is another facet of the full-time clubs setup as well, because Larne have done it, Linfield have done it, and also Coleraine. And I think one of the things that was attractive to the new owners and bringing in the full-time setup was they were able to go big on the academy, and Coleraine are now sitting within their first team squad 4-5 very promising teenage footballers who will figure at various points this season for the Bandsiders, but crucially as well have a chance possibly of going across the water to other clubs in England and Coleraine getting some money, and that helps the full-time model. It keeps it afloat as well. So rather than just investors putting money in, Coleraine are generating money themselves.
Damian, we got our first certified banger of the season. It took us a weekend, but we got there, and you were there to see it. It was Coleraine versus Ballymena. Ding dong, red card, great goals, bit of rough and tumble. This kind of had it all, and Coleraine get their first win of this new era, somewhere, somehow. But when we reflect on this game, I think it was the first sign that when you're down to 10 men and you're trying to get this win that you feel could have been slightly ripped away from you due to a controversial decision, to play on for, what was it, another 35 minutes?
Yeah, it was a good third of the game.
And looked brighter and fitter. This full-time football's maybe doing the business already.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the basic takeaway from the game, really. I mean, it's first half wasn't a great game. Yes, it was intriguing in its own way, but it really, as you say, burst into life the second half. Jamie Glagan scored, made it 2-1 to Coleraine. Just a few minutes later, he gets red carded. An altercation with Keelan Loughren inside the Coleraine penalty area. Ballymena scored the penalty, obviously, through Ben Kennedy, as we all know. But from really that point on, Coleraine sort of went to a different level. Kind of then dominated for the second half, scored to make it 3-2, had another goal disallowed, and scored deep into added time to make it 4-2. But they finished the game so strongly, and that was the thing that people were talking about after the game, supporters, etc., that they had 10 men but it looked like they could have kept going for another half an hour. They were just relentless. They were pressing Ballymena back. Ballymena had 11 players, but really couldn't really compete, couldn't stay with Coleraine in those closing stages. And it was very interesting speaking to Jim Irvin, the Ballymena United manager, afterwards in his post-match interviews. And he said something which I found interesting. He said, I mean, Coleraine went down to 10 men. He says their players wanted to run more. So he was looking, and he was quite critical of his players, also of the subs that come on. And I think he's just generally was disappointed. But I think what it did illustrate was the work that has been going on behind the scenes over the summer in Coleraine with the full-time setup, the transition to 5 days a week or 4 days a week training, and what they've been doing with Junior Mendes, the one of the guys, one of the coaches that came in at the tail end of last year, the work that has been ongoing there. And I think we're starting to see the first evidence of that.
One of the new players who was able to shine on Friday night was Reece Campbell. He comes off a really difficult campaign last year. I don't even know if he really properly kicked the ball for Dungannon, pretty much out for the entire season. He's coming in at that unique age where you're just beyond this super youthful starlet. It's about, right, are you now going to grow into the prime of your career? And he was the one player which I thought, you know what, if this doesn't kick on in the first couple of weeks, doesn't get a goal, doesn't get some sort of goal contribution, there's a lot of other players fighting, do they rotate in, and then does he ever get himself going? Does he ever settle in well and establish himself within this first season? And I think that game is going to be super important for his long-term Coleraine career, because he gets the assist technically from the rebound. Great shot to have the belief. I think we saw him do stuff like that in a Swift shirt, but in the new club home debut, to go, I'm going to hit this, because if that goes flying, he's getting shouted at by the fans from three corners of that ground. To do it, almost hit it on target, and then score a second one later on. That will give him a huge amount of confidence, backed by the manager as a sign-in. And as you said, they pushed on. Shevlin got his goal, 2 goals in 2 games. That will be great for his confidence. And I mean, it's been tricky start so far, but overall, I'm getting a positive vibe from Coleraine fans about this new start.
Yeah, the positivity is something that I was going to bring up, because obviously when I live in the town and you meet everybody, and I was coming down on the train from Belfast last night, and the conductor, he's a Coleraine fan, and he was, oh, what did you think? And he was buzzing about it, and everybody else that I would meet across the town, everybody's been really positive about it, and I think that's key. I mean, before the season, before a ball is kicked, I can honestly say that as journalists working in the town and fellow, like, all our supporters, genuinely nobody had a clue what to expect from this season, because we did not know. There's about 18 players left in the summer. There was about 7 or 8 have come in. New coach, head coach, really getting into his stride for the first season, and nobody knew what was going to happen. And I think Dungannon away on the first day was a bit iffy. Again, they finished that game well, and if it had have gone on a little bit longer, I think they would have probably won that. Obviously, beating Ballymena in the manner that they did it in front of such a huge crowd as well. And I think suddenly all people have seen a little glimpse of possibly what this team might be about. Even just the fact that they kept going to the end, and there was that youthful exuberance and commitment and stamina. And I think people genuinely left it going, yeah, I like what I seen there.
Is there a bit of expectations starting to bubble? Great end of the game. Signings are starting to find their feet. Are people starting to think that, you know what, get a few more games going, get this team rocking and rolling, maybe get a big scalp early here, and this full-time football could deliver a few dividends early?
Peter, come on now. We're 2 games in here. What are you trying to do this here? You're trying to set us up here like 2 games, but I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Yes, there will be an element of that, but listen, there's a game coming along on Tuesday night away at Glentoran at the Oval. If Coleraine lose that game, for example, the knives are back out, or the knives will come out. I wouldn't say they're back out. Football fans being football fans, we're all fickle. That goes with the territory. If they go up to the Oval on Tuesday, play badly and lose, all that positivity that we talked about from Friday suddenly dissipates. So you're only one game away, really, from a bit of a disaster at any club. But yeah, listen, the signs are good, but still, you get the sense, and a lot of supporters will tell you that they still feel the squad's a little bit light. You know, we're in into the second week. If you're hitting sort of December, January, and your squad is a little bit light, then it becomes a whole different scenario as well. But listen, early signs, early indications are positive, and it's really nice. And when you come away from a game and everybody's happy, and it doesn't happen very often, Peter. So we'll take it when it's there.
You say everybody's happy. Is everybody satisfied that Glacken altercation was a red card? I imagine live in the ground you're thinking, what on earth was that for? Upon video review, where does your opinion lie?
Do you know what? The video review, to me, I don't know what your opinion is about it, but it kind of appears inconclusive enough. I don't think the angles that we've seen, yes, there's a coming together. Both the players are on the ground. There's a tangle. They're trying to like extricate themselves to get back up again. I've watched it a few times, and I'm still not really sure what happened. Only, I suppose, the players involved will know. I don't know. I don't know. And I'm not just speaking here with my Korean head on me as such, but I'm really not sure what happened. I would like to hear your opinion, Peter.
I thought live and in person, and kind of
Mm,
from the first, from a live and in person from a screen point of
mm,
view, seeing it, I thought, what on earth is that about? What has happened here? What does he
mm,
think that he saw? I now think it might be for a flick of the boot when
mm,
he's down, Glacken's down,
mm,
and he kind of flicks his left boot up.
mm.
I think his left boot, kind of David Beckham 1998 style, that maybe clipped
Yeah,
Lockhart in the face, and it's one of those intent. How hard was it? Where did it clip him?
yeah,
Whatever. If he does do that, and the referee does think he sees that, that is a red card, I think.
yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing that it can be, is that they're trying to get up, and whether Glagan does something with his boot or whatever the case, that's the only thing that it looks like it can be. But again, it, it doesn't look clear, But obviously, either the referee or his assistant has seen it, and the referee was very quick to produce the red card. And no doubt it's going to be a big blow for Coleraine, because you lose a player like Jamie Glacken for 3 games. It's not good.
Ballymena lose that game, and they'll think they really should have got something out of it when it's 2-2 and you've got such a long time with the one man advantage. It is a tough start to the season for them. Linfield at home, they'll feel as though they were strong enough but beaten fairly well by a better team. You lose in the way you do. Were many Ballymena fans dreaming of anything more than maybe 1-2 points if it's all going well, or maybe sneak a win in this game across 2 games? The bookies would have suggested it's going to end up with nil point. One of the positives has to be is that Ben Kennedy's come in and looks exactly like the reason he's been signed for. He's a star in this team and can produce that cross in, finding space on the left hand side and picking out McMurray. Ballymena simply did not have a player that could do that, pull a goal out like he did. He looks motivated, he looks hungry, he obviously is able to get the penalty as well. That has to be the positive. That, yeah, they kind of fall away in the second half defensively, and that'll be a worry. But Ben Kennedy moving to Ballymena, questions about what his motivations were, and will he have his motivations on the pitch? I think you saw he's here to kind of show I'm the best player in the league still.
2 games, 2 defeats. their foot off the table. Their next game is against Crusaders on Tuesday night. Say they lose that, that's 3 games, no points. They did a lot of investment in the summer, and it's again similar to Coleraine with what you were saying about the positivity and a great start. And while we're not reading too much into it after 3 games, but if Ballymena were to lose 3 in a row at the start of the season, given the summer of recruitment they had, I think I'd be slightly worried there. I know it again. I have to stress it's very early, but in football what it's like when you get off to a bat. It's like winning's a habit, losing's a habit. So I think, and even the manner of the defeat against Coleraine on Friday, the manner of it against 10 men, I think that will hurt them, hurt Ballymena, and I think it will also raise questions for Jim Irvin. And I think afterwards he did say that he will reflect on his performance, and he would hope that his players, would also reflect on their performances. And a little bit worrying after 2 games, when you're having to sort of come out with comments like that.
Well, they've brought in a lot of players in turn. They still have the main body of that squad is the team that were very lucky that Newry was in the division last year as well. So as much as many of the players come from Coleraine, there's a betting in process point of view. It's finding your best 11, trying to make them all play together as one. One player they're going to be without now is Josh Carson. After his tackle in the Linfield game, retrospectively has been upgraded to a red and a 3-game ban. He did play in that game against Coleraine. That's a tough blow to lose him for not only the Crusaders game, but then games against Dungannon and beyond. We've seen red cards being strucken off after the game due to a review. What did you make of this? I think it's people suggesting, well, why can't you review everything? Let's not go there. I think that's kind of a silly discussion, but looking back and going, oh, that tackle should have been a red card, 3 games. It's interesting, isn't it?
Well, again, post-match comments from Jim Irvin. I don't know whether you've seen them, read them. He didn't miss the point. He had a lot of questions he needed answered. He wanted answered. Just in the manner of the way that everything was handled, I think he was saying that they didn't know until the Friday before the game, and the club, I think he said, found out at the same time as the press. He had Josh Carson, one of his players, messaging him saying, "Am I able to play this evening?" So there was that whole, and Jim was quick to stress that he wasn't using that as an excuse. But I think he was disappointed in the manner of the way the news was broke. He also then, I suppose, brought up a legitimate argument that if you're going to do it on this occasion, taking like what was a still photograph of a tackle, and you use that as the basis then to do a retrospective decision, does that then set a precedent that going forward in the league, that every contentious decision, or if somebody takes a photograph and puts it in social media of a bad tackle or whatever, do then the authorities review every yellow card, red card, goal decision, whatever? Where does it finish? I think that was his basic argument, and he's probably got a valid point there. What do you think?
Well, the Glacken red card could very much be reviewed and taken away, so there's peaks and troughs there for every club. What interests me is that ultimately it's a bad tackle. It's a bad tackle that got a yellow card. It's not violent conduct. It's not you were seen to be insert cause of violent conduct. There was a violent coming together after the game, and there has to be a red card. Like, it is ultimately a bad tackle. And one thing I didn't get to talk about last week is that I thought it was very interesting seeing the referee Lee Tavender kind of come out and give his opinion of it. I absolutely backed his reason. I really, really liked it. I was watching from the back. I couldn't see it. I can't give it because as a fan, I get so frustrated sometimes when I see decisions being made, and I think, how can you have seen that? Yes, it may have been a penalty, but you can't have seen that because, that player was there, the ball was there, it may have looked like this. So I find it refreshing for him to go, this is my view, he's absolutely correct. So how could I have seen the veracity of that tackle?
Yeah, that's well and good, right? Given the furore that has ensued, will Lee Tavender do that again? Do you think?
It depends on the refereeing is a fraternity, is it not? And how one referee interacts with the general public is then puts questions on others. So I wonder within refereeing circles, what are they saying? Hey, Lee, that was great. That really, you're getting people to think we're good guys and back it and make us look like, God forbid, humans at the end of the day. Or they saying, look, if you do this, then all of us has to do it. Does the governing bodies want trials by social media where we have the referee defended on the stall that is Twitter announcing to the jury that is the general public, etc. So this is going to be a unique case that I feel like we will return to. I understand the reckoning that they've come to, saying we believe this is violent conduct or whatever the red cards for, harsh tackle, 3-match ban, retrospectively. Every corner penalty, whatever decision that won't come to, but it's can of worms like most things,
Is,
isn't it?
and I think also we're in again uncharted territory, really, because this is really, I think, the first time that something like this has happened. I think also Jim Irvine had mentioned on Friday as well, because Josh had come out after the tackle, and I think he had made comments or he had spoken to some media about it as well. Given the furore and the controversy that has ensued, can you see us getting to a point where maybe referees will be told, particularly in social media, don't engage in anything about a controversial decision? And do you also then see managers maybe saying to their players, if somebody asks you about that, say nothing?
We have seen players get bans, regardless if they were served or not. We've seen players that have got bans because of something they've said on social media. And sometimes it's to do with what they've said about the game, about somebody else, whatever. So I would imagine if I'm someone in the club, I would tell all players, just don't get involved sometimes. Regardless if you feel as though you're right. I should probably follow that rule as well sometimes when I'm stuck in getting into the stats of whatever player I've said I think is good, and there's always going to be someone tell me that I'm wrong. So yeah, that from a referee's point of view, I think I would very much always like a referee to do a wee interview at the end of the game to go,
Yeah.
this is it, that's it, whatever, because it helps the decision making. Because sometimes the anger is that, why did they make that decision? What was it for? And I'm pushing it just from a fan's point of view. Will happen? Probably not. It has to be a directive that filters down. The sun rises, the sun sets, the referees are to blame for everything.
Yeah. I think it is refreshing when they come out and do try to explain decisions. I think that's a good thing, and maybe it doesn't happen often enough. So whether we see it going forward or not, we'll soon find out.
We move to a team who has also lost 2 games in a row. A team who's also, in fairness, lost to 2 top 6 sides, and a team that's brought in a lot of players. They were minutes away from sneaking a point against Glentoran, but Portadown let that one precious point slip through their fingers. They don't chase down, they don't hassle Niall McGinn. He is able to pop off a shot. It ricochets off a player, loops over McCary, and that away end at Shamrock Park goes wild. I think if you're looking at this from a Portadown perspective, you're thinking encouraging enough. Could have maybe sneaked something against Cliftonville if it wasn't for a wonder save by, I think, Otomosu late in that game. They're 1-1 against Glentoran. If they are able to close down McGinn, they could have got a point. They feel confident, but there's kind of two games there where all the hype around this Portadown team and the signings they've got, they've been outrun for a majority of the game, and despite all the pump and the feeling of, well, we didn't do too bad, they're sitting there with 0 points and a creeping concern.
It's like welcome to the big league, Peter, isn't it? Really, I mean, let's say it for what it is. It's like Championship to the Premier League. There is a sizable difference. I haven't seen Portadown in action live this year yet, but from what you're like saying to me there, that they were in both the games that they have played to date, but have just been lacking a little bit. And I guess that reflects that step up from the Championship to the Premier League. And I know that they've brought in a lot of experience, but they've got to learn. And I guess they've got to learn quickly at this level that you can't make mistakes, or you've got to do the basics, or you've got to take your chances when you get them, because otherwise it's a very unforgiving place and you're coming up against good quality players, hardened Premier League team, Premiership teams. And if you are that little bit off, they'll punish you for that. So they've got to learn quickly, but I have no doubt that Niall Curry and the players that he has will do so, because Niall is an infectious personality. He's a top proven manager at this level. And I think it's like any team, you just want to get that first 3 points, that first win. And if you're a newly promoted club, the longer that you have to wait for that first 3 points, it becomes harder and harder, and there's more pressure and more. So they need to get that first win, and once they do that, then they'll grow in confidence.
That's exactly what Glentoran got after that horror show against Crusaders. In more ways than one, they get 3 points against Portadown, and Dylan Connolly looked immense on that right-hand side. As we spoke about earlier, no Fisher. Jordan Jenkins was then brought in. He scores against Portadown. I feel as though, I think he was even talking about it as he's probably scored more against Portadown than actually he scored for Portadown on that mini loan. But so Glentoran almost do Glentoran things, and after dominating that game, only leave with a point. They get the 3. They can now try and push on. You've even heard Declan Devine talking about how this. He still wants bodies. He still wants to try and improve this side, and I think you can see that the idea of leaning on youth and Murphy and others. You think when it comes down to the Novembers, Decembers, in the big games, they might be seen a bit wanting. Cammy Palmer looks like he's having a great start to this season for them. Striking doesn't look like it's absolutely on fire, but they escaped with 3 points. And I think from Glentoran, early days, check it off, get what must feel like a real morale boosting win, and let's go to the next game.
Do you know what? Just when you're talking there, I'm just thinking, I don't think I've ever seen a summer in the Irish League where there's been so much transformation in so many clubs. Glentoran being a prime example, the players in and out. Portadown, we've just talked about so many. Ballymena, we've already referenced. Coleraine. I don't think I've ever seen a summer where there's been such an overhaul in playing terms for so many clubs. And I think what will happen, or what might happen, is it's going to take teams a certain degree of time just to try to gel. I mean, Dean Shields has talked about it. Declan Devine has talked about it. Other managers have talked about it. We're only 2 games in. Those players and teams are still trying to get to know one another. Dean Shields was saying that. He says, I'm still trying to get to know my players, how they play with each other, what kind of characters they are, because they're only in the door. So there are so many teams and clubs are like a work in progress. And I don't think we'll see any sort of real signs of where we are as a league about 2-3 months down the line.
One team who looked like they know each other very well, Linfield. They demolished Dungannon in that first half, and there was no way for the Swifts to come back, and it's their big names stepping up to the plate. Cooper, Shields, McLean, I think this team looks super solid. They have got a great runway to start the season, fixture-wise, the take-off. Larne having to chase them once again this season, I think will benefit them. And they look just so determined and strong and efficient all over the pitch. There's some areas where you can pick holes in it, that it's not some sort of super mega team, but I mean the quality, the skill, the experience, the aura about them. It's 2 games in, but they look as though they're going to steamroll plenty of teams, especially at Windsor Park.
I'm just thinking they're one of the clubs that were probably quietest in the summer transfer window. Do you think, have they got enough there? Because they obviously came close to the last couple of years, but they were just second best, I suppose, to Larne. And I know, like, sometimes their fans are vociferous and trying to get more players in, and they would tell you that themselves. Do you think, yes, they've started well, do they have enough, do you think, to wrestle back the Gibson Cup, or do they need reinforcements?
It is only 2 games, but I look at it right now and I'm starting to get this feeling that Larne and Linfield could be separated from the rest of the top 6 by maybe mid-November, depending on the amount of games that Larne have to actually claw back and have played by that point. But I think Linfield could look vociferous against some of the other top 6 opposition. Do they have the striking talent that excites in the same way that the Bonis and the Ryan connection would have? No, but we all know that there is potential in McKee to be that player if he didn't have all those injuries and stop-start runs in the team. Fitzpatrick is as solid as they come. What will McDaid be when he comes back? Annette is an extra facet up there. Maybe you're looking at who's 3rd or 4th down from those attacking 2, but this setup where it's Miller on one side, Cooper on the other, and you throw in maybe a McBrien as an alternative in there later on. It's how much you can keep that side solid. Do you change the top 2, make it a 3? Because it's weirdly in centre midfield now they have options of Shields, McLean, Fallon, Ballantyne's in there now. Where will Charlie Allen play if he's to be a real first team player? Josh Archer was in there, and now I've probably put a few put a few lights in managers' heads, thinking, I actually do need a centre midfielder. Hello, Linfield. What is your 6th choice midfielder doing this season? Because they could be my main man. I would shake your hand right now and guarantee that I think Linfield will earn above 75 points this year. And I think they'll maybe find it easier in those games that they draw. Maybe it's Coleraine is going to be the team that put the spanner in the works for them recently, but there's something about them. They've scored plenty of goals. They're happier in possession. Their big difficulty has been not being able to break teams down away from home and maybe being caught at home. And so far, I feel like they are going to outscore teams and might not be as loosey-goosey at the back.
You've made a good case. You've made a good case for them there. I have to say.
But then, where's the weakness in Larne? Where's the weakness in Larne? Because this team also looks solid as a rock, and you know.
But we all know, right? Any team that finishes above Linfield generally is going to win the league. They are the barometer of what you have to do in this league to compete to win leagues. Yes, they've fallen just slightly short the last couple of seasons, but as you rightly pointed out, it made a terrific case for them. The nucleus of that team is tried, tested, seasoned, whatever adjective you want to use. The core of that team, if they can just win games that maybe last year that they just failed to win, they'll not be far away. And I wouldn't count out Linfield by any stretch, and they may do a little bit of business, who knows. But they're also in the perfect scenario where they're sort of a little bit onto the radar given Larne's focus about the Europe. And if Linfield can get out of the traps early and get a healthy lead, that suits David Healy and the players, doesn't it? If Larne are preoccupied with Europe and Linfield can quietly amass 4 or 5 wins in the bounce. All of a sudden, they're in the driving seat.
Beef up that third or fourth striker, and I think people will believe in them a bit more. How concerned should they be about that Adam Glennie goal? I don't know. There's hallmarks where people go, that is a little chink in the armour to say this team can switch off. But when you score 3 goals so quickly, look so dominant, I guess those things are going to happen. Another team who had a really massive off day on Saturday was Carrick Rangers. Like, Stuart King highlights and talks about the inconsistency of his team, and they go up against Loughgall, who we haven't seen this term just yet, and they fall in the first half to 2 identical goals, 2 set pieces with all those big mammoth men that they have. You're thinking, this is the one thing we should be good at. And I was very concerned for Carrick Rangers. There's a side point to say that Loughgall executed brilliantly and still have all the tenacity, fast passing skill that make them such a great prospect in this league. But for Carrick Rangers to be top of the league, well, hey, we won a game and goal difference and alphabetical order helps out. They have a chance to go 2 for 2, and they started brightly enough in that game, but way too many players had an off day. They looked very ineffective going forward. I know Stuart King's frustrated with that team because I could hear him from where I was in the ground. And
you'll hear him, that's for sure.
What do you do? I think there's concerns for me in that team of just how do you swap it out? How do you change it? Is there enough pace at the top end of the team out wide to try and change it up and break down a team? Loughgall do score goals against this side. Let's just say that they did it last year and they did it on Saturday. But let's give credit to Loughgall here, because they are able to hang in that game. Alan hits the post, and they go up, and then they get that corner kick. It's just really funny thinking from a Loughgall point of view, going, should we try that corner kick again? Like, from the same end to the same player in there. And Carrick just fell away, and they tried to change it the second half of Paul Heatley, but nothing really came out of it. And I think we'll see what happens, but this Loughgall team looks as good as they were last year.
No chance of a second season syndrome for Loughgall then, from what you could see, Peter, on Saturday.
It's funny, I looked at that team from 1 to 11 and I thought, okay, cool, who's weaker here? How will they square up against teams that people are comparing them against, the likes of Ballymena and Portadown and Glenavon, and maybe in those games that they will falter. But this midfield has plenty of grit, might be on the diminutive side,
good
but
pace.
Kelly and Hoey and Gibson throws himself about there. Oh my goodness, they're hard working, the quick 1s and 2s, firing up top, and there's Wade on one side, McAleer on the other. I think McAleer is very underrated. Ferris is a big number 9, battling, will get you goals with his head, has a bit of a sharp shot on him as well when he has to. And then, after 70 minutes, you fire on Jay Boyd and he'll do exactly the same thing. Battling, you've got other players to fill those wide places. Injuries may hold them back, but they bring in McDermott, McCloskey into that side. There was no Francis from Dungannon at all. So, those are players who didn't really even get a look in there on Saturday. No Robbie Norton as well. And I think a lot of those players might not be well-known names amongst other fan bases, but I think you could drop them into those sides. And again, a one-off game, but I think it was a statement from Dean Smith, who probably absolutely doesn't get the credit he deserves for building that team. And they just play good football. I love watching Loughgall because they play good football. It's interesting to see, and they can get results like this.
But it's such an important result as well, because they obviously had to wait a week to get their campaign started. They had such a terrific season last year. People being people will expect Loughgall maybe to struggle somewhat this year and think one season wonder, yes, they did very well last year, all that patronizing stuff that we all come out with at times. So for Loughgall to achieve the win, and in the manner which they did it at the weekend, beating Carrick Rangers 3-0 quite comprehensively, what that must do in the inner confines of the Loughgall player group and management, because you can walk away from that game going, yes, we can do that this season. We will prove those doubters, if they exist, we can prove them wrong. And I think the way that they put out that statement win on Saturday, they'll take enormous satisfaction, belief, and confidence from that going forward. Because a lot of people will think Loughgall and won't replicate what they did last year. They can't, they're a small club, blah, blah, blah. The arguments yourself. So for the way that they went and did that on Saturday, they're sitting fourth in the league after one game played. You know what I mean? Delighted. They'll be delighted. And I'm delighted for them too, because you mentioned Dean Smith, and he's a lovely guy. He's always very amenable with the press as well. And it's always nice to see the so-called underdogs always punching above their weight, as it were. So yeah, great for them. But on the subject of Carrick Rangers, I mean, a really inconsistent side, aren't they? You just really don't know what you get. I mean, they've caused Coleraine problems in the past. You just don't know, maybe one game to the next, what they're going to do. And I guess that's why, or what infuriates Stuart King just so much, because he knows he has the players there that are capable of going and getting wins and putting on performances. But then maybe in their next game, they fail to achieve the same heights. And that just seems to be a nagging problem that they have. And as any wonder, Stuart King shouting from the touchline, if I was managing that, I'd be doing the same.
Danny Gibson is off the boil, I think, because he was such a starlet for them last year. It's 2 games, but he was not finding his mojo there on Saturday, and it could have been a very different game if Curtis Allen puts away that chance that hits the post. But he hooks Michaelitis at halftime for Paul Heatley. You look at the squad; they clearly have something. Ben Tilney's not there at the minute. It's more just if they're not sitting there 1-0 up or 0-0 trying to go for something, do they have something if they're 1-0 down against Glenavon or something like that to just change it up if the current state of play is not working? I don't know. I like so much about Carrick up top, but ultimately if your players aren't producing it, you can name the names of Luke McCullough, Alan Michaelitis, Clucas, Joe Crow.
They've some players there, haven't they too?
Yeah, you can name the names, but if they're not producing on the pitch on that day from set pieces, for example, you're going to go in at halftime 2-0 down, and how are you going to claw it back when you've got a great footballing side like Loughgall who will happily pass that ball around all day, and if they're panicking, boot it up, because there is McAleer one side or Ferris the other. And I think when you're 2-0 up, Loughgall was able to shut down the long ball game from Carrick Rangers.
And they're good at home too, Loughgall. They love playing at Leagu Park.
Things may change throughout the season, but right now I say Loughgall have a better 1-11 team than Portadown and Glenavon for sure. And that comes from them being together, them knowing how to play, and people talk about what a great guy Dean Smith is, etc. I think people need to say, how has he been able to assemble this squad? How has he been able to get the football out of this team? Because it was very impressive. Maybe it's one off, and this could be a difficult time for them, but they had something on Saturday which I liked. Glenavon, let's go to them. This could have been October last year, could have been January the season before. In current modern Irish League football, Glenavon don't beat Cliftonville, and Cliftonville came round to Mourneview Park to shake hands, score goals, say thank you very much for the 3 points. I know, by the way, have you met Joe Gormley? I'm sure you have. He scores goals past you, and he'll take one away with him today. 2 out of 2 for Cliftonville. That's how you want to start the season.
Yeah, I mean, all the talk in the summer was what, like, the scoring firepower that Cliftonville lost. Sam Ashford, The Hale, and Ben Wilson. So a lot of the focus was not. Rival supporters of other clubs were going, a lot of goals has left Solitude. That'll maybe lessen Cliftonville's attempts to wrestle back the league. But like, as you say, they're sitting there tucked in nicely on goal difference behind Linfield from maximum points after 2 games. Cliville had a fantastic season last year. They look to be sort of picking up where they left off. And as you said, in Joe Gormley, they just have the man for all seasons. I mean, I don't know what age he is now. I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't want to even for us to be talking about his age, but you know, class is permanent.
You said it before I could, and
class is permanent. And Joe and Jim Majelton deserves a lot of credit too for the way that he's managing Joe Gormley in the latter stages of his career, perhaps introducing him late in games as a substitute, or and that's obviously helping to extend Joe's career. I'm sure as a player he would prefer to be starting every game, but he would probably also acknowledge he's maybe not at state of his career when he can't do that. But one thing you know about Joe Gormley is if you give him a chance, he will score goals. We've seen it for so many years. And, you know, you talk about Lee Bonis earlier in terms of strikers and stuff. Joe Gormley has to be in that conversation.
No.
He's done it for years. And what a player, what a goal scorer, and what a lovely guy he is too.
Yeah, no, I'm not going on Twitter and saying Lee Bonis is a better Ashley striker than Joe Gormley. Top 10. Top 10, that's what I meant. The one thing I love about Cliftonville, this defensive line. I mean, Sean Leopard was on the bench because they can add in Addis and Newbury and decide this week we want Luke Conlon. And then other side of that, Sean Stewart, Shea Kearney's flanking on the other side. It's going to be up top and maybe a bit of change up in centre midfield. The quicker they get Rory Hale back, the better. I'm not hearing that it will be quick, so we'll see. There was talk of Roden Hale not coming back for a while, and he eventually did. So I think a lot of Reds fans will sit tight and light a few candles in the name of Rory Hale coming back. But, you know, Joe Gormley's there. That's great. Ryan Curran coming back, being the mainstay. That's excellent. You had no Donnelly there. Will they be joined by another Donnelly? Destiny, Ojo. I mean, we know nothing. But you've got to say from Ashford and Wilson's additions last year, if they can even be 80% of either of those players, that will help them restock. It's 2 games against probably 2 of the lower performing teams in the league, so we'll not get too excited about that. They'll have a big test fairly soon as league schedules go. But look, you can only beat what is in front of you, and they've done that. For Glenavon, Carrick game aside, and all the talk of them making the pitch smaller, I mean, that was kind of a humour story. By the way, I don't think they're the only team in the league that's done that this year. The questions I've been getting is, wait, hold on, a smaller pitch but expansive passy football? Like, I think James Duna showed that when he is on, he can be quite an alluring attacking threat, but Glenavon have not seen that week in and week out, and it's definitely a team that's still finding themselves. I mean, Jack Malone is going to be such a massive blow. So sorry to hear about that for any player and the injury they've had. They were obviously receiving treatment for a long time near the end of the first half there. He will be a big blow. I guess for any of that starting 11 for Glenavon, they haven't got the squad where if you lose one of your best 11 players, you'll want to go on. But
do you know what?
Tech that you've got your first goal and dust yourself down and go again.
I know it's early again, but Peter, if you were a Glenavon supporter, would there be cause for concern there? Like, they didn't finish the season last year particularly well. They've sort of, in comparison to some of the teams around them that maybe are in the same bracket, they haven't spent the cash or haven't strengthened to the same extent. There just seems to be a lack of momentum at the club. I just think, you know, we were saying before the start of the season, myself and colleagues here in the North Coast, and we were obviously just trying to predict, you know, maybe who would win the league and who would sort of be struggling, because it's very difficult to look to see who's going to be, because it's such a competitive league this year. But I think there was a little bit of a mention of Glenavon maybe finding the going tough this year, and certainly the early indications are that thus far they are. And I just wonder, I'm not down in that area, neck of the woods, maybe you're better informed as well, but it just seems to be not much in the way of momentum in comparison to some other clubs such as a Coleraine, where there has been a little bit of a injection of positivity, etc. I just wonder what your thoughts are.
firstly, the bar has been raised by other teams around them in that area.
100%.
Ballymena have signed experience and quality, and they'll look for them to gel. Portadown have entered the league, and people would probably argue last year's Portadown team were better than last year's Newry side. They come in, and you've got to believe with the signings they've had, they're going to be better than Portadown last year. Loughgall look strong and have quality. Dungannon really shone at the end of last season and have young, hungry, fast, dynamic players coming out of the ground there. And I think Glenavon going into this season has massive echoes of Ballymena going into last term. Struggles up top. What's their formation? A lot of older players mixed with youth. Perhaps looking back and feeling, we've been a solid Premiership team for a long time, and that they've stood still a touch while bringing in new players, and it's just how do they turn around the poor end of last season, and until they get those wins, it's hard to see them do it. And I think just the league's got more competitive and they've been dragged down, and until I see them score goals, I don't know if they'll be blessed with such promise.
Difficult times, like as you said, and as we had said previously, myself and my colleagues, those teams in that sort of region of the table all strengthened considerably in the summer, and there is no Newry in the league this year. No disrespect to Newry, so it makes it precarious for a number of teams. And at this moment in time, Glenavon would be in that sort of little bracket where you sort of fear for them. But it's early days. Let's stress that once again.
Trying to get this podcast out nice and early this week, as there's Tuesday games to just put an absolute spanner in the works of this podcaster schedule. So we'll get to the games that are happening on Tuesday and maybe briefly look ahead to the weekend ahead. Look at that. PP, Crusaders Larne ain't happening. What is happening though is Coleraine against Glentoran. It is the first big top 6 test for Coleraine down to the Oval. And these are often kind of scrappy, fun games. Do you feel confident that Coleraine going down to Glentoran, they can make their first big sticking the flag in the ground moment of the season and say, we are not here to play?
Well, listen, given what happened on Friday, the manner of the win, the feel-good factor coming from that, the way they did it, the players, you could see after the game what it meant to the players, and it was very notable as well that they went over and celebrated with the fans. And I think Dean Shields is very keen to try and engender a connection between the players, the fans, everybody within the club, and certainly that was evident on Friday night. Going to the Oval, always a difficult place to go. Obviously, Coleraine, a lot of new players in that team have never been to the Oval before. Glentoran, big club. Jamie Glacken is absent because of his red card as we record this podcast. That'll mean a reshuffle for Dean Shields, but I guess he's lucky insofar as Jamie McGonigal, who missed the win over Ballymena. And also, by the way, congratulations to Jamie, him and his partner Cara just had a little baby girl. So congratulations. That was, I think, one of the reasons why he wasn't playing on Friday. So in terms of team, Jamie McGonigal can probably come straight back into the team in the absence of Jamie Glacken. And I think in recent times, Coleraine have enjoyed quite a good record at the Oval. So they'll travel there quietly confident. I wouldn't go any further than that. They'll know the size of the task that's in front of them. Obviously, Glentoran coming off the back of a dramatic win as well. They'll be buoyant on the back of that. Well set up. I think Coleraine this year, are trying to adopt a more possession-based style game. So it's going to be interesting to see how they will match up with Glentoran. I haven't seen Glentoran play live, so I don't know what way they're going to set up. But as things stand, Coleraine, they play 2. They've had a win and a draw. So I think they'll go to the Oval quietly confident of getting some sort of result. And I suppose if you offered them a draw at this moment in time, they would probably bite your hand off for it.
That's where I'm leaning. I'm leaning 1-1, which I think is the
Mm.
ultimate boring suggestion, but I do think Glentoran will pop up and maybe get a goal. And I'm very confident that Coleraine will score. Glentoran make these kind of tricky affairs and often perhaps not the most thrilling affairs. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm going to go 1-1 there.
That do you know what? 1-1 sounds entirely plausible
Uh,
as well, Peter.
Glen,
So we'll both sit on that fence. I hope that's a big fence that we're sitting on there.
are you going to sit in the fence for Glenavon versus Linfield at Mourneview Park live on the
Yeah.
TV or the stream?
No, I think everything that we've talked about over the past hour and a bit, I think leads us to a Linfield win. I think those are Linfield's bread and butter type of games. They'll probably go down to Mourneview. They'll maybe not play well. People probably come away from Mourneview Park going, "Oh, it's not a great Linfield team, and it's no, they didn't play well." But yet they'll be going up the road with 3 points in the bag because that's what Linfield do. They go to games like that. They may not play well. They may not play scintillating football, but they'll get the job done and they'll leave with a win. And ultimately, that's all that David Healy will matter or care about.
Yeah, I think it's how many goals here. I'm going to go for a Fitzpatrick double in the middle. I don't want to go up. I'll just say 3-0 and be kind, but a part of me wants to go higher.
I'll go for 2-0 and it'll just be like a standard Linfield 2-0 routine one.
This could be a little tricky tie for Cliftonville. Tuesday night, Dungannon Swifts come up to Solitude. If they don't get a goal kind of early, will Dungannon learn their lessons from the Windsor Park game and think, you know what, we let ourselves down against a big side. Let's not do it again. There's a part of this that says maybe 0-0, but I think Cliftonville might just get the one goal and sneak it. Probably a lot more goals in this game than I think.
Do you know, did Dungannon not cause Cliftonville some trouble last year?
Oh, they beat them out of cups
Few
all the
occasions.
time and wrecked their season last year. And it's usually at Solitude too.
Yeah, it is. And football is a funny way of working. You do find that teams have particularly good success at a ground against a certain team, and I think it's a mental thing as much as anything. Those Dungannon players will be going with good recent memories of performances at Solitude and beating Cliftonville in their own backyard, so they'll go there with that in the back of their minds. But I'm not sure. I would tend to go for a Cliftonville home win. I don't really. I know there has been shocks in this particular fixture in the past, but I just think Cliftonville will prevail. I do think there'll be more goals than what you think, Peter. So I think it could be in the region of a 2-1 to Cliftonville.
I think Cliftonville's defence might be the strength here, and they'll take the goal and
Mm.
maybe sit on it like that Portadown game. It's just, can Cliftonville get the goals? Oh,
Yeah.
we knew this fixture was coming eventually. Ben Kennedy says to his old friends, "Hello guys, nice to see you. This is my new home. Would you let me score past you? Very, very
Uh-huh.
please." I mean, Ballymena fans will think, okay, top six side, yes. Will Crusaders be rusty or will they be rested going to Ballymena? I kind of think it'll be a 2-1 win to Crusaders, and Ballymena are sitting there going, a last minute offered goal, bad defending, 1-1 till the end, should have got a point or three, and it's another one of those encouraging performance, 0 points on the board.
Do you know
2-1.
that game is just screaming a draw to me? I, I think Ballymena need to get something. And I think Jim will probably try to impress upon his players. Let's just get something from this game. Even if it's a point, it's something to get on the board to build on. My worry about Ballymena is, do they have enough in the final third to score enough goals to win games? Yes, they've got Ben Kennedy and Johnny McMurray scored a great goal against Coleraine. It was a beautiful finish. But I'm just wondering, will they have enough firepower to win games on a regular basis? And I'm not quite sure that they do. At the back and midfield, they've definitely strengthened there from last year. But I'm talking myself into a Crusaders win here, but I'll have to stick with my guns, and I will go for a 1-1 draw.
I'm starting something slightly new this year, which I didn't do the first weekend, which is probably my first cardinal sin. You'll know what I'm talking about if you got involved. I'm going to pick out a game. Usually it's going to be the TV game every week, and I'm going to ask people under a tweet that I'll post early, so make sure you go to the Kick and Match Twitter account the day of a game. Usually it should be Friday, and go, right, what games you picked, and I want people to predict the result, the exact score, and a one goal score from across. So obviously if you think it's 0-0, then that's your result, all wrapped up in one go. You get a big 3-pointer there if it all comes together. So the game,
prize on offer, Peter.
Pride. I'm going to try and keep a little table, pretty much. So
you got a mug?
You got
mugs to give out.
Well, ultimately, I'll not have to give out mugs because I'm going to win this myself, so it's fine. So there's 3 points on offer. You can get involved here, but the game I've decided from Tuesday I'm going to go for, because I think it will feel tricky amongst people, is Loughgall hosting Portadown. So last week, I don't know how, well, I think it was, what did I predict, like 2-1 for Coleraine. I think I said Kennedy was going to score. So I got a point for Coleraine winning, didn't get a point for exact score. I don't think anybody predicted 4-2. And I get a point for Kennedy scoring. This is funny, because I don't want to go too bold here, and there might be a bit of recency bias here. I could go 3-0 Loughgall here, you know.
Oh, that's a big call.
I think if I could predict Loughgall are going to score early, I would. I think Loughgall will score early.
In my head, when you were talking, I'll tell you what my score in my head was going to be. I was going to say Loughgall will score 3 times, and I'm going to say Portadown was going to score 2 times. So I was going to go for Loughgall 3, Portadown 2, because nice wee local derby there, and under the lights. Anything can happen. I think it'll be a bit of a frantic occasion, and I think there'll be lots of goals. So I'm going to go for Loughgall 3 and Portadown 2.
It will be a very nervy occasion, because, as we talked about with Ballymena, having those 2 games, Lud to get points on the board. Portadown fans will think, going down to Loughgall, this is the time we can finally get points. And that will create a bit of nerves, I imagine, and particularly if they don't start off sterningly. And as much as Loughgall is not a club in the size of Portadown, from a team point of view, they're going to give them trouble. And, maybe it'll be complete opposite. I think I'm going to go 2-1, Loughgall score early, Portadown scramble back, but Loughgall win out. And I'm going to go for my goal scorer across the game to be Nathaniel Ferris. And that's probably because I'm going to squeak in maybe a penalty. So I'll put that out. 2-1 Loughgall and the final Ferris to score. But yeah, this could be a tricky night for Portadown. It could be their coming out party in the league as well. Loughgall doing a Carrick Rangers and not being on top of their game and getting beat. But Tuesday night at home, there's a lot of pluses in the Loughgall category.
I'll tell you one thing, that'll be a great game. If anybody happens to be going to that, I think that'll be just a great game. As I say, local derby, under the lights. You've got Portadown back in the top league. Portadown fans and anybody connected with them, I suppose, rightly believe that they're a big club. They'll be going to Loughgall. They'll be looking at Loughgall. Despite what's happened in recent seasons, Portadown, they'll go there thinking they're a bigger club, etc., etc., etc. It doesn't mean anything in the bigger picture, obviously, but so there's that undercurrent to it. Loughgall will want to maintain their good start to the season, albeit they've only played 1 game. I think it's going to be a cracking game. I think there'll be goals in it because of what you said. There'll be plenty of nerves on show. Nerves can lead to mistakes. Mistakes can lead to goals. I think it's going to be a high score, and I think the guy that we talked about earlier in the program, Benji McGee, will maybe just underline his importance to Loughgall and maybe put a few knots in his price tag by scoring as well for the hosts.
Tremendous. Most people will probably be listening to this come the time of ahead of the weekend after those games, and it's hard to really get into the nitty-gritty predictions ahead of Friday and Saturday. We all know that Larne's game against Portadown is postponed on Saturday. I don't know if Portadown are happy with that or not. Maybe their wait will go on if they don't get a win against Loughgall, but maybe they'll get a better Larne side in regards to taking them on because they might be tired from other games. But of those fixtures, Carrick Glentoran, Coleraine Glenavon, first North Belfast derby of the season, Swifts against Ballymena, Linfield Loughgall, any of them stand out? I think it's probably North Belfast derby,
Oh, it
isn't
has
it?
to be. It has to be, doesn't it? It has to be. I mean, that to me, that's a big game, biggest game of the weekend. Dungannon and Ballymena is also a big game, I suppose, in its own right as well. But anytime the Crews and Cliftonville meet, that's a big game. And it's like the Ballymena Coleraine game. It's coming very early in the season. I mean, Coleraine and Ballymena meeting in the A26 derby in the second game of the season. It's massive. Usually you're a couple of months maybe into the season before you have your first derby. You're in the second week. We had a derby against Ballymena. Same applies for Crusaders and Cliftonville. Very early in the season. Difficult. Like Crusaders have started really well under Decky Cadell. You know, a lot of people were sort of thinking, oh, Stephen Baxter's left. Declan Cadell's come in. They've lost players. It's going to take time for the new manager to impose his style of play. But I think what we did see in the Crusaders' victory over Glentoran is the emergence of a lot of talented young players, fresh players coming into the Crusaders setup, which brings a new dimension to their play and also adds a new dimension to the derby as well. The fact that it's at Seaview as well. And I mean, Crusaders are very difficult to beat there at their own place. So interesting, but a lot depends, Peter, what happens in midweek too. I mean, there's a game before that game, so depending on what happens and players getting hurt or whatever. So, but that's the pick of the games, and also Dungannon Ballymena is an interesting one because for Ballymena
At Stangmore Park makes that so difficult for Ballymena. I mean,
but that's the kind of game that Ballymena must be looking at to get something from. With the greatest of respect to Dungannon, but Ballymena have to look at those games and that particular game, and we need to get something from that because if they don't, their season really starts to become tough. So
it's just nerves, if they don't get anything against Crusaders, they go to Stangmore Park against Dungannon, who played against two tough teams in Linfield and Cliftonville, thinking, oh, we probably should get a win here, and if they don't, that maybe makes it that distance between the top end of the bottom six and the bottom end feels bigger, and then I cannot wait until Friday. I'm getting it way too ahead of myself. Friday the 30th of August, Ballymena Glenavon. Wow, first potential big game for both those sides. Of course, maybe Glenavon will beat Coleraine and it won't matter this Saturday, but hey ho. Damian, I'm so glad the podcast is back because I get to sit here and talk to people like yourself about football for way too long, but it's always a delight when it's with yourself. So many great insights and views and opinions. Where can people find such delights during the periods where you're not speaking some truth into their headphones?
yes, well, I myself, along with my colleague Jonathan McNabb, most people around the league will know Johnny very well. Colerane's #1 fan. So myself and Johnny, we host the Coleraine FC podcast. And as yet we haven't, because I was away last week. Yes, during the week. So we haven't. So this week will be the first of the season. We haven't got around to it yet. But yeah, we're back next week. Probably it'll be out Wednesday or Thursday of next week. Post the Glentoran game, when we'll hopefully have plenty of good things to talk about, and then on a weekly basis after that, and of course I do a bit of writing for the newspaper as well. So yeah, all busy, Peter, all busy.
Excellent.
But thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having me on. It's always a delight. I think I've been on before as well, so yeah, always good to get on, chat, and shoot the breeze with you.
Excellent. No, I echo all of those sentiments. Good luck to yourself for the rest of the season. I'm looking forward to chatting to you very soon.
Wait, which game are you at this week?
This weekend, I am
Yeah.
actually gallivanting to London this weekend, so I'll have to watch from afar. I will not have the smell of the turf, which is a great plug to say that if you're listening to this podcast and you're sitting there going, why hasn't he uploaded it on Tuesday next week? I'm only going to get recording it on Tuesday next week. Sure, it's the bank holiday. Give me a break.
Absolutely.
So
Enjoy.
it will be a day late next week. Thank you for the plug. I'll be watching all the games like yourselves from afar, from looking through London, and my wife's like, "What are you doing? Nothing." Oh, and also,
Surely there must be something better to do in London.
well, you never know. And I'll say this because I didn't get to say it earlier on. Watch that Benji McGee goal against Carrick. One, because it was great, but also because if you listen back to it, you'll just hear someone going, "Oh!" That is 100% me behind the camera, man.
Yeah,
just going,
very good.
"Oh!" So I was.
That's what I'm going to go and do that right now.
And it makes a difference from hearing somebody going, "What are you doing?" Insert player's name here after a goal. So that is me. You can hear me in the distance losing my mind to that random thump from Benji. Anyway, Damian, until next time, cheerio.
Yes, Peter, all the best. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, Damian kind of spoiled my little ending moment. I am going to London. I think I can share with you, engage people listening at the very end of the podcast, the bonus bit. Going to London, potentially going to see a few shows that are non-football related. I'm actually going to be going to Wembley Stadium this weekend. Yes, nerds that actually know what I'm going to the wrestling. I'm very, very excited about that. If the reference did give it away, kind of fan of the odd grapple, and I'm looking forward to watching AEW All In at Wembley Stadium. The wife is going, and we're doing other things to try and make that deal a brokered agreement. It'll work out all good. I'm going to say a thank you. I know we did about 3,000 of them last week, but thank you for the people that rated it, because I noticed that going up, and for the followers. They've peaked, and like I said, this week is a good example. Next week's another good example of letting you know, because the usual schedule has slightly altered. Try to get it a wee bit earlier for you this week so that you could enjoy it before the games, and then next week life's in the way, like a trip to watch wrestling in London. And your bank holiday as well, that's it too, and it has to be a day later. So thank you for your patience, thank you for your support, thank you very much for listening to this podcast, maybe on hands-free, by asking your smart speaker, "Hey smart speaker, please play Kicking Match and Irish League podcast." Do that all, it will give it to you. And I was able to do that because you can see a little graphic. I know you can see a graphic on your player right now, but you can see a graphic on your smart speaker if it has a screen. And I appreciate your smart speaker might not have a screen. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's Kicking Match and all those things. Still haven't set up the TikTok account. Tweet me good places to eat in London that doesn't cost £300 billion. And Five Guys doesn't count because there's one in Belfast. Seriously, tell me where to eat in London and my wife will thank you. Bye bye.